there we go. Okay, I see it. Okay.
That's good. Perfect.
Hi guys. So thank you so much for joining. I'm here with the amazing Dr. Wong, and I'm Dr. Amy Shah, and we wanted to talk about intermittent fasting, kind of with a South Asian flair, a few things that we can do, both particularly as South Asians and may be familiar to you if you are South Asian or know someone who's South Asian or are interested in South Asian culture. So I'm so excited to have Rupa here because it's so much more fun when it's like a conversation between two people, and because she's a physician and she's South Asian and she has so much to share herself, I think this is going to be really, really helpful for people. So maybe what we can do is, Rupa, you can start with your bio and intro, whatever you want to talk about, and a little bit about why you started intermittent fasting, and then we can go into the details.
Perfect. Amy, I mean, this is really exciting for me because you're such an expert in this field, and intermittent fasting is something I've been doing for about 2 years, but we'll get into that in a second. So I am a pediatric ophthalmologist. I practice here in Honolulu, Hawaii with my husband, but I'm originally from North Carolina and trained all in the East Coast, ophthalmology residency at NYU, and then fellowship at Boston Children's, and I was on faculty there. And I really just feel so passionately about diet and just the South Asian diet in particular, because my father, who was, or still is just this amazing person, electrical engineering graduate from IIT, so very classic, like Indian father that immigrated here in the 70s to New Jersey. And he had a heart attack when he was 43, played tennis 3 times a week, vegetarian. I mean, I think this is a very typical scenario for so many South Asians, that skinny, exercised, you know, had quit smoking 15 years ago. So really no other risk factors, but had the hypercholesterolemia, which is very predominant, I think, in our ethnicity. And then of course the rice and the chapatis and, you know, all of those things that are really contributing to that kind of coronary artery disease. So I remember going to med school at Cornell, and for some reason they did a physical for me, and they drew my blood work and they drew my cholesterol levels. And so I was 22, you know, just fresh out of Duke, going to Cornell, and my cholesterol was 222. I still remember this number because it was crazy to me that, you know, I weighed less than I do now. I mean, I was like 95 pounds, super fit, varsity athlete, played, you know, tennis, all of this. And I had such a high cholesterol number. And I think, like many South Asian women that are skinny, that have never had to think about diet, right? I would eat fettuccine Alfredo. I would just consume whatever I wanted to because I didn't gain the weight. I still had a nice 6-pack. Like, I looked good. We were fine with it. And I think that's really where it's like, wow, I need to really be a lot more mindful about what I put into my body. And I have 3 kids. I live here in Hawaii now. With each of my children, I failed my glucose tolerance test, my 1-hour glucose tolerance test, but passed the 3-hour one. But with my 3rd one, I actually had gestational diabetes. So, you know, all of this just played into the cholesterol, the borderline, you know, diabetes potential for later is kind of played into why I started doing intermittent fasting. So.
That's awesome. Thank you for that intro. And I think that I can totally relate in terms of my family. My dad is one of 5 brothers, and all of them, each one of the 5 were diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in their 30s. And it was a big wake-up call because they are all thin. My dad actually, you know, was quite thin when he moved to America. I was about 4 or 5 years old, and I think it was like the pizza and the Coke and the assimilation into America. Like, instead of rotis and sabjis for like dinner, once a week or even twice a week, we would go out to Pizza Hut or Taco Bell, and it was like such a fun treat, and we felt so American. But really, that, I think, really put him over the edge, because I still remember he loved his Coke and Pepsi, and he still, you know, diet soda is one of his favorite things. And, you know, as what part of India is your family from?
From South India. So
South India.
Tamil.
My parents are Gujarati, and I, you know, I was born in India as well, came here when I was 5. And so they had basically a vegetarian, high carbohydrate, high glycemic diet from India, but then it got to the next level with, the processed foods here. So I started my journey because I actually was in a dark, like a really bad place myself. I was burned out. I had 2 little kids. I had finished all my training. I'm sure, Rupa, you can relate, because I went to med school and I felt a little burned out at med school, but I think I was okay. And then I went to Boston for a residency and I felt a little more burned out. And then I had my first kid and then started fellowship. And by the end of fellowship, I was pregnant with my second child, had my second child. And I was so excited to start working in a clinical job. And within 2 months of starting my clinical job, I just felt like something was so off. I just didn't feel myself. I felt tired. I felt moody, and I felt like my gut was like always inflamed. Like I was always constipated or bloated or something. And my personality was not even myself. Like I felt like I was PMSed all the time. Like I was cranky and I was tired. And everyone said, "Oh, it's fine. You have 2 little kids. You started this new clinical job. You moved to a new state." Like all of this stuff was happening. And I did nutrition as an undergrad. And so I thought like maybe it's the way I'm eating or what I'm doing. And so that's when I really took a deep dive and tried a bazillion different things, which most of them failed, but a couple of them really worked. And when I looked at the science behind intermittent fasting, they basically showed that things like intermittent fasting have the potential of improving your health beyond just a calorie restriction. We all know that calorie restriction does not work in the long term, or it's extremely difficult to follow. To say to someone, okay, you have to eat 30% less calories every day, is a very difficult struggle. But when they looked at intermittent fasting, so they literally, what they did is they took 2 groups of mice, and this study has been repeated now 11,000 times. So this has been like validated many, many times. They took 2 different groups of mice, exactly the same mice from the same mothers, and they fed them the same exact like American high fat, high sugar, carbohydrate diet. And they watched them. The only difference is they took that one group and they limited their food to just 10 hours a day. So they're doing like a 14-hour fast. And they basically found that you were able to stave off disease. So when you're talking about hypercholesterolemia, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, in that group that was just doing a very modest fast, what I consider a circadian fast, basically fasting in the nighttime hours, like 2 to 3 hours before bed. And then so you're maybe going 12, 14, 15, 16 hours, but really natural with circadian rhythms. And then they kept repeating it because they was like, well, that doesn't make sense. Like they're exercising the same. Are they just eating less? No, they're eating the same number of calories. But that's when I got really interested, because I thought at first it was just calorie restriction, but no, there's this other thing. So then they repeated it in humans, and the pilot studies are only out in humans, unfortunately, because we're still new in this world, but the pilot studies are super promising. Again, 10-hour dietary window, so 14-hour fast in general. They just tried to pick something that was easy. Like they've seen benefits with 12.5 hours to up to 18 hours, but they were trying to pick something that normal people could follow. They found the same exact results or similar results in humans, that you were able to stave off a lot of the metabolic diseases, including hypercholesterolemia, diabetes. And in that one, they had people continuing their meds so that it would be like a real life clinical scenario where you would be taking your meds, but you'd also change your diet. They didn't tell them to change anything about their diet except for the timing. So that being said, you're also going to change your diet. So I tell my patients that are doing intermittent fasting, or people I'm talking to, or my family members, especially South Asians, I say, what you eat in your eating window matters. Of course, in the studies, they didn't change that because they wanted to see, changes despite the bad diet. But you really do have to change your diet. If you're eating a super high glycemic diet with a lot of rice, a lot of rotis, a lot of sugar, you're going to notice that you crash really hard, and you're not going to be able to fast even 12, 13, 14 hours is going to feel impossible to you because you're always on this sugar roller coaster and a high carbohydrate roller coaster. And so before I get into metabolic switching, which is really the magic behind intermittent fasting, I wanted to ask you, like, how are you doing it on a practical basis with yourself or your family members?
So I'm the only one that does it. You know, my kids obviously are not doing it. My husband is much more almost like a pescatarian vegan, and just he has like a very, you know, swimmer, he's of Chinese descent, so does not have the same issues that we do. And I think it was actually quite easy because when I was following that very, very strict gestational diabetic diet, and I think this is what happens, that you're willing to do it for your baby, right? You're not willing to do it for yourself typically.
Yeah.
Don't make those changes. But of course, for my child and for the health of my child, yes. And I realized I was doing a lot of snacking at night, 8 or 9 p.m. And it wasn't unhealthy snacking, but it would be an apple or something with a little bit more of a sugar. And so once I had to start doing finger sticks and cutting all of that out and being much more mindful about my glycemic index, then I realized it's actually not that hard to stop eating at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. So we eat an early dinner because my children literally want to eat at like 5 o'clock. So it works for me. I mean, we're pretty much done with everything by like 6 or 6:30. And then I tend to fast. Again, I don't even like put a specific time window on it, but I really tend not to eat until about noon the next day. Just, you know, I'll have coffee because it just is, I'm busy, I'm working, I'm not even really thinking about it. I do it about 3 to 4 days a week, but the days that I'm at with patients, then I find that I think I snack a little bit more, like I need it, but I actually find I have a lot more clarity of mind on my operating days where I don't eat. And I know that might seem weird to people, like you need sugar in your brain, but I feel like I can focus more. And I think that I don't know if that links back to our family members doing all their pujas and the rishis going off into the forest and doing their meditation and fasting. Like I kind of get that.
Yeah, no, it makes sense that I think I saw somewhere that every single religion in the entire world has some form of fasting. And because just like you said, it kind of takes away that desire for food. And if you know you're fasting, you can concentrate on spiritual texts, or you can concentrate on whatever task is at hand. And we'll get it. I think we do need to get into like kind of rules and specifics, but what I will tell you is that metabolic switching is the key behind intermittent fasting. If you can understand that, you can make it work for you. So what metabolic switching means is we use glucose, sugar, for fuel as our first preference all the time. That's our first preference. We will always use the sugar that we have available first. So we'll use that in the blood and then from our muscles. And then once we've used that up, we have some stored glycogen in our liver from your meal like last night or 2 nights, in the morning. And so you use up the glycogen. And then we think that all happens within about 12 hours, sometimes more, depending on if you've had a really high carbohydrate meal. And then that's when the metabolic switch happens. Your body says, okay, I still need more fuel, but I've run out of glucose. So now I'm going to use fatty acids. And so for women who are or men who are trying to lose a little bit of abdominal fat, this is great because you're going to start to mobilize those fat cells and say, like, I need some fatty acids. And when your body is able to switch, it's kind of like a muscle going back and forth from fatty acids to glucose, because once you eat again, you're going to use glucose again. But going back and forth seems to turn on all these evolutionarily these mechanisms that were around for thousands of years that seems to promote longevity, anti-aging, better heart health, better brain health. And so all these beautiful genetic changes happen when you're using that metabolic switch. So what I tell people, Rupa, I don't know if this could ever work for you, is if you're doing a fast, you're doing a pretty long fast, so off the bat. But if you were doing a shorter fast, say you're a busy, you go straight to work in the morning and you need to have breakfast. What I tell people is, hey, maybe you start your fast at 6 p.m. and you go to work out at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. and then you don't eat until 8 or 8:30 or 9. What you did is not only did you use up your glucose, but when you start to work out, your body was like, oh shoot, like I need more fuel. And so it kind of turns up that metabolic switch, and you're sure to get some of those benefits. So fasted workouts can be really powerful as well. And have you tried that?
Yeah, so I think it's exactly also like a motivator. So what I would do is my admin days where I work from home, like today, I won't eat. I get up in the morning, put on my workout clothes. So sometimes I get caught up with doing a little bit of work. So until I work out, I know I'm not supposed to eat. Like I will not eat. And so that helps me get through that. And it also just sets that routine, right? So that you've got these tiny little goals to go through.
So what do you eat do you eat or drink or do have anything while you're fasting? Because I wanted to go through some of the options.
I do drink coffee, black coffee.
Good. Okay. First thing in the morning.
First thing in the morning.
Okay. So yeah, coffee and tea. What I tell people is actually there's levels. So water is your ideal, just water. The second level is any kind of non-caloric intake, like coffee, like tea, like lemon water, like sparkling water, like you shouldn't have artificial sweeteners, so no diet soda, and no kind of 0 calorie things that are using artificial sweeteners. Stevia is kind of like a middle, a level 3 maybe. So if you wanted to have a stevia lemonade because you couldn't do the water, you couldn't do sparkling water and coffee, you could do stevia lemonade just to get you through maybe 1. But because we don't think that it makes your glucose spike as much as, or insulin spike as much as the other artificial sweeteners, because it's natural. And that may be true for the other natural sweeteners as well. Like I think there's, a couple of other natural things that people use. And then there's a level, I guess that would be level 4, is if you're really, really hungry at night, and I'm sure, Rupa, you've been there, I've been there, where I underate at 6 o'clock, or, I even started fasting at 7 and say, it's around 8:39 and I'm about to go to bed and I am starving. And that's happened as a woman. This is very interesting because I think studies have shown that we're a little less resilient to the stress of fasting. And so we may feel our hormones will feel that hormetic stressor a little bit more than a man who's fasting will. So what I suggest to people is to eat a little bit of fat before going to bed. So healthy fat. I'm not talking about like lard. I'm talking about a little tiny slice of avocado or half a tablespoon of nut butter. We think that about 40-50 calories should be okay while fasting, especially if you've had nothing else in your fasting window. And that can really help if you're about to break your fast, but you're like, can I just try this and wait for 30 minutes, see how I feel? That I know has saved me many, many times, because I can have like half a tablespoon of nut butter, drink some water, maybe a stevia lemonade, and then I'm good to go until the morning. So this is just some troubleshooting if you need to. Of course, if you don't need any of that, more power to you.
No, but I think that's great, because having that option, because there are times if you're working until midnight, you are going to get hungry. If you go to bed at 8 o'clock, it's a totally different situation. So it's nice to know these are some options that you can have. Like, I love nuts, but I also have kidney stones. So that's a balance I have to maintain as well.
So are you on any, if you don't mind sharing, any treatment for your cholesterol?
No. So I actually went to the cardiologist down the hall and I said, here's my family history. He ran all my blood works. And I guess according to Mayo Clinic, criteria, he said that you don't need to be on anything. So I actually—
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's wonderful. So the other things I would say, so intermittent fasting has definitely been shown to reduce cholesterol, blood pressure, heart disease, risk factors, diabetes. But I feel that if you wanted to take it to the next level, what I would do is during the eating window, when you are eating, you ramp up that fiber. It sounds like you're so healthy, but I know for me, when I was vegetarian all my life, but when I looked at my diet, I realized like I was not eating barely any vegetables, because I thought fruit and vegetables were in the same category. So I just ate fruit all the time and didn't realize that I was getting very little vegetables in my diet. So really pumping that to 6 to 8 servings made all the difference in my digestive health, immune health, and cardiac health. And I think that a lot of people who are watching, like, take a look, go on MyFitnessPal and log in a day's worth of food during your eating window and see what you're consuming, because you might find that there's a lot more room for vegetables in there. And if you are eating a lot of vegetables, that fiber really gives you a feeling of satiation. So you're not going to be eating a ton of other snacks. Have you found that?
I have, and whole vegetables and water are my two sticking points, because and that's why I get kidney stones, is because I just don't drink enough water. I mean, like, I haven't had any water at all today, and it's 10:40 in the morning. I mean, that's just my regular. Like, I forget about it, and then when I'm in clinic, I'm so busy, I just don't have time for it. So I definitely know that those are two areas I need to work on for sure.
Yeah, the water is a great one, because you can buy these jugs on Amazon. So my husband is like doing this. So my husband's a gastroenterologist, and he has lost about 50 pounds in the last 4 years. Wow. And he carries this jug that's like a gallon and it has markers on it. You should get that, Rupa. He carries it with him to clinic and everywhere, and everyone stares at him and laughs, but he still loves it. I gave up on my jug. I use just, regular water bottles, but I think it might be good for you, because you want to have that like motivation of, oh, I got through. So what he did is he is a typical, exactly your story in terms of cholesterol and family history of high cholesterol. And he was actually on a statin for a little while because he was actually overweight during our residency years. He went to Brown for residency, and we were living in between Boston and Providence, and it was very stressful, obviously, and there was lots of not a lot of cooking going on, not a lot of grocery shopping going on, so we were eating out a lot, and it really creeped up on him over the years. It was like 20 pounds and then 10 more pounds, and then and finally he said, he wants to change his life. So he does this intermittent fasting where he kind of skips dinner a few days a week, and so basically what we do is we pack lunch, breakfast and lunch for him, and just like you, super busy in clinic, so it's usually a smoothie and like a quick lunch that you can have, and then a couple of days a week he'll just skip dinner, so that way it's kind of like an early meal, long intermittent fast till the next day, and just drink water. Again, there is a little difference between men and women. Men are much better able to tolerate longer fasts than women are. We just find, unfortunately, that there's not a lot of human studies on women's hormones, but there's a few mice studies that do show that long, prolonged, very intensive fasting can affect the hormones in a negative way, but I'm talking about really intense fasting. And what I tell women to use as a check-in, and I don't know if you have noticed changes in this, so you tell me, use your energy as a really good guide for your hormones. Like, are you feeling energetic after you do your fast, or are you feeling exhausted, drained, fatigued? Because energetic means you're on the right track. Are you feeling cranky, or is your mood even? Meaning your brain, emotional. Are you focused and even, or are you cranky and tired? So cranky and tired is also a sign that something is off. How's your sleep? Is your sleep improved in quality, or is your sleep worsened in quality? So that's a third check-in. And the fourth check-in is your menstrual cycle. If you are a woman in age of menstruation, between the ages of like 13 and maybe 50 or 55, are you having regular cycles? Is your cycle more regular or less regular? If your period is a great barometer of your hormone health. If you're not getting your period, or you're skipping your period, or it's becoming really light or heavy, that's probably a sign that something is off as well.
Those are great.
Have you noticed any changes in any of those, like your mood, your energy, your focus, your sleep, or your cravings?
The focus, for sure, I think is always much improved when I am fasting. And I think that's probably why I do it on my admin days at home too. I can just power through so much work and just get the accounting done and get all of these tasks done, because I feel like I'm just like all cylinders are firing, and it's great. And sleep has been improved too. I am someone that's just always, because I was a gymnast, hormonally has never had, and I have PCOS, so just never had very regular periods as well. So a lot of hormonal stuff over there on that side. But yeah, definitely the clarity and the sleep for sure.
Do you still eat Indian food?
You know, since when my mom comes and she cooks it, and she comes from North Carolina, with the kids, it's just so labor intensive,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And because they want to eat so quickly, I either have to like make it the night before, and we eat meat in our house. So I don't make it. I used to cook it all the time for my husband before we had children, and I just don't do it now. But I need to start, because they've started loving just even the little like ready-made packets that I buy from the Indian store. So
Oh my God. My kids are, we jokingly call them FOBs, like FOBs, fresh off the boat. I'm sure you've heard that, because my parents are here and they've helped us for years since the kids were little, and they make all kinds of fun, Indian food for them. My kids love Indian food. So what I've asked them to do is swap it out. So what we do is there's an Indian Gujarati dish called pav bhaji, which is like bread eaten with this potato pea mixture. So what we did is we use less potatoes or sweet potatoes, and we put all kinds of vegetables and blend it up in it. And then we use either no bread or half the bread. And then we make like chana masala, which is chickpeas, make lentils. And I just tell my parents that, hey, the swaps that I'm telling you for the kids are swaps for yourself. So like instead of rotis, we have these almond flour tortillas, and we have made these chickpea flour, like I think they call them chilas, where you can make it, or lentil, like little dosas you can make without rice or half the rice. And so little swaps like that have changed a lot of how they live, and you can still enjoy Indian food without having all those super high glycemic index foods.
That's so since my father had his heart attack in his 40s, my mother's a physician, so they started, and my father's very, regimented. So he also has type 2 diabetes as well. So they have just for the last 30 years, I mean, they stopped eating white rice like right away. I mean, they do cracked meat. They do all of these little swaps in their diet, and they're vegetarian. And South Indian diet, which is dal. I've never even had coconut chutney until I went to India, because we just didn't eat that stuff
Yeah.
because of the fat. And now they say, oh, okay, coconut's fine. But 30 years ago, they thought you had to limit everything. But
Yeah.
a lot of lentils, a lot of dal, a lot of sambar, rasam, that kind of thing. And then they make cracked wheat instead of rice, and they make my mother makes all these different kinds, same, where she swaps out the flours instead of doing like moong dal, or I don't even know. Like,
That's awesome.
So I've been learning from her, which is nice.
I wanted to see, I think we're getting close to time, correct? I don't even have a clock on me, but
Oh yeah, we are.
are there any final thoughts or questions that you have, things we should discuss?
Well, I thought, especially because I think we'll probably have a lot of women that are tuning in, I had read some studies, and you kind of alluded to it, about just the length of fast for a woman versus a man. I had read even like doing a 15-hour fast was sufficient, or might even be better than doing a longer 16 or 18-hour fast. So most of the days I do tend to do more of a shorter, like 15 or 16-hour fast, just because I can actually achieve it. But I was wondering about the studies for that.
Yeah, so great question. In fact, there's no clinical human randomized control trials on women and fasting. So unfortunately, we don't have that data yet. But anecdotally, I will tell you that women tend to do much worse with longer fasts. And we think that's from all the studies that we do have that show that hormetic stressors, which fasting is a hormetic stressor, just like weightlifting and everything we do for our bodies, a lot of them is a hormetic stressor. And women, especially during certain parts of their cycle, so day 21 through 28, which is like maybe the week before your period. So saying day 1 is your period, you have a 28-day cycle. The last week of the month, which is day 21 through 28, you might notice you're a little more irritable, you're a little less stress resilient, you're a little less able to do the stressful things you were able to tackle the rest of the month. And that makes sense. So that's the week that, if you are noticing that, that's the week that I turn down the fasting intensity, meaning that instead of doing 16, 15 hours, you might just go to 12 hours or 13 hours. That really did help me troubleshoot through my hormonal changes. And everybody's different. There's women who feel zero difference, whether, even if they're doing 16, 18-hour fast. And if you are one of those people, then more power to you, because you do those hormonal check-ins with your energy, your sleep, your mood, and your cravings, and you say everything is fine, then you're good to go. But if you're trying to troubleshoot this, then what I would say is start with 12 hours. Make sure that you're doing fine on that with the check-ins, and then move to 14, then move to 16, and then maybe you're modulating like me. What I do is I do 3 days a week of a shorter fast, which would be between 12 and 14 hours. Then I do 3 days a week of a push fast, which is 15 to 18 hours. And then I do 1 day off completely. And then the 1 week before my period, those day 21 through 28, I really watch it. I almost cut down my workout stress, and I cut down my life stress, and I cut down my fasting stress. So I lower the number of hours just for that week. It seems to work well for me and a lot of other people. They use this, a lot of trainers, Olympic trainers, and use this same kind of cycling for their female athletes, which I think makes so much sense.
That's so fascinating. I've actually been reading a book about how to just be able to schedule your tasks depending on your cycle day and which ones require the most energy. So it's very interesting to also.
What book is that?
It's the, gosh, I'm blanking on the word. I'll send it to you.
Curious. Yeah.
It's really interesting just about how to be more productive with your time is you need to schedule your tasks at certain periods of the month when you are more productive. So.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I feel the same way about the daily cycle, like circadian rhythms. 80% of our genes are affected by circadian rhythm. So I didn't realize what a difference it made in my life just to adjust my daily schedule a little bit according to circadian rhythms. It makes all the difference. So like things like stopping food 3 to 4 hours before bed, and turning off blue lights about an hour before bed, and then getting some sunlight in the morning, and then morning sunlight before 10 a.m. is like one of the most transformative things that has, and I know we're lucky, you and I are lucky because we live in places where there is sunlight, but you can get just daylight, any kind of daylight is fine. That's changed my life in the last year significantly. So I definitely believe in the circadian rhythms thing too.
I agree. I mean, lately I go out on the lanai from 6 a.m. to basically 10 a.m. and I work out on my patio just to be able to get that sunlight in. And then I'm a big believer in the blue light glasses, but not because I think a lot of people wear them because they think that it's going to make them their children not nearsighted or make their vision stronger. Not because of that, but mainly because of the circadian rhythms. So
yeah, love it. Awesome, Rupa. This was so fun.
Yes. Love finally like chatting with you about
I know, exactly. It's so fun. It's so fun meeting people. Like one thing about quarantine has been good is like meeting people from all over that we may meet one day, at a conference or some kind of, but this was so great to get to know you so we can do more stuff in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing all the science behind everything. I love it.
I want to take a picture of us too. Hold on. So we can share. Oh, I think I turned us off.
Oh, here.
Okay, wait, hold on. There we go.
Oh, yeah, share it.
All right, awesome.
All right. Thank you.
All right, should we end it?
Yep. And then I can just